The article hit at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Local developer's $5 million penthouse makes real estate headlines. My name. My photo. My building. Suddenly, after 8 months of complete silence, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. But here's the thing that made me laugh, actually laugh out loud in my car. It wasn't congratulations from my family lighting up my screen. It was a text from my father. Short. Direct. Cold as ever. Family dinner. 6 p.m. Important discussion. That's it. No, hey. No, we saw the news. No, we're proud of you. Just a summons. Like I was being called into a meeting. And they knew exactly what they wanted. But they had no idea what I'd been planning for 4 months. Let me back up, because you need to understand how I got here. My name is Maya Fletcher, and for 26 years, I learned to take up as little space as possible in my own family. Not because anyone sat me down and told me that's how it was going to be. It was just, understood. Written into the walls of our house before I was old enough to question it. My older sister Aubrey. She was the bright one. The golden child who could cry her way out of anything and charm her way into everything else. My younger brother Tyler. He was the baby everyone protected, even when he screwed up, which was constantly. And me. I was the steady one. The responsible one. The one who stepped in whenever someone else stepped out. The gap filler. It started small. I was maybe 10 when Aubrey forgot her science project at home. The whole thing, the one that was due that morning. She burst into tears at the door, and my mom went into full panic mode like the world was ending. Without even thinking, I offered mine. The one I'd spent a week building, staying up late, getting everything perfect. Aubrey won second place with my project. No one asked why I didn't turn anything in. Mom just said, Maya always figures things out, like it was a compliment. Like being invisible was something to be proud of. That became the pattern. Over and over. When I got my first part-time job at 16, I saved up for months to buy this small set of drafting tools. Nothing fancy, but they were mine. My first real investment in a dream I was too scared to say out loud. I wanted to be an architect, maybe a developer. I wanted to build things that lasted. Before I could even open the package, my dad asked if he could borrow the money. Aubrey had forgotten to pay some bill, and he needed to cover it. You're responsible, he said, already pocketing my cash. She's got a good heart, just needs more time. I nodded. Because nodding was easier than fighting. Even birthdays followed the same script. One year, I baked this elaborate strawberry cake for everyone, the kind my mom actually liked. Spent hours on it. When Aubrey showed up 2 hours late with a box of store-bought cookies, Mom kissed her cheek and said, "You always think of the sweetest things." I stood there holding the cake server, and I realized something. I had been erased without anyone even noticing. But the memory that changed everything, the one that still sits in my chest like cold metal, happened years later. I was 23, living in this tiny studio apartment I could barely afford. Winter. No heating. I'm talking 2 jackets indoors, fingers numb while I worked. I was hunched over my desk, revising a floor plan for a duplex I was hoping to renovate. My first real project. Bills spread across the table, rent reminders blinking on my phone. I was drowning, but I was doing it. I was actually doing it. I called my dad. Not for money, I knew better. Just for advice. Just to hear his voice tell me I wasn't crazy for trying. He answered, but his voice wasn't gentle. Real estate is for men who understand numbers, Maya. You should try something safer. Then he hung up. I sat there in the dark for maybe an hour after that call. Just staring at the floor plan spread across my desk. My hands were shaking, from the cold, from anger, from something I couldn't even name. Part of me wanted to crumple every sheet of paper and throw them away. Prove him right. Prove myself small. But instead, I smoothed out the papers and kept working. That night, the stitching on my black portfolio tore open. The one I carried everywhere. Instead of throwing it away, I sat under my pathetic desk lamp and sewed it shut by hand, needles shaking every time I pushed it through the fabric. Each stitch felt like a promise to myself. That I wouldn't quit. That I wouldn't shrink. That I would build something they couldn't ignore, even if they'd never acknowledge it. That portfolio became the only thing that stayed with me through every project after. A reminder that I could fix what broke, even when no one else cared. Then came graduation. I worked my ass off for that degree. 4 years of late nights, of juggling 2 jobs, of choosing between textbooks and groceries. I made it. I actually made it. The week before the ceremony, I sent the invitation to my family. Physical cards, because I wanted them to hold something real. I even called my mom to confirm they'd received them. Of course we got them, honey, she'd said. We'll be there. The day finally came. My name echoed through the stadium, and applause rose like a wave. I turned toward the family section, toward those 8 chairs I'd reserved, each one with a little card showing my last name. All 8 were empty. They hadn't forgotten. Let me be clear about that. They had chosen not to come. I found out later, through Tyler's girlfriend, who felt bad enough to tell me, that Aubrey had called that morning. She wanted to go dress shopping. My parents dropped everything to take her. Tyler went along because, well, Tyler always went where the attention was. They chose a dress over my graduation. And that was the day I understood exactly where I stood. 8 months passed after that ceremony. Quiet months. Clean months. Months where no one said my name unless they needed to compare me to someone else. I worked. I saved. I signed every deal I could reach. And I didn't tell my family a single thing. Silence felt safer than offering them something they could overlook again. I threw myself into work like I was trying to outrun something. Maybe I was. Every property I evaluated, every renovation I planned, every contract I negotiated, it was proof that my dad had been wrong. That I understood numbers just fine. Better than fine. The Penthouse project started as a risk. A building everyone else had written off as too damaged, too expensive, too much work. But I saw what it could become. I spent 6 months on that project. Personally oversaw every detail. There were nights I slept in my car in the parking garage because going home felt like wasting time. When it sold, the number was bigger than I'd let myself hope for. Then came that Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in my Honda outside a job site, engine humming, reviewing evaluation when the notification slid across my screen. A colleague I barely remembered had forwarded an article. Local developer's $5 million penthouse makes real estate headlines. My name was right there under the headline. Bold. Next to a photo of the building I'd rebuilt inch by inch. The article listed everything: numbers, timelines, the renovation process, projected returns. My phone started buzzing. More links. More congratulations. None from my family. I set the phone face down on the passenger seat and stared through the windshield as clouds pulled across the sky. For a long moment, I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel relieved. I just felt still. Then my phone vibrated again. This time, the name on the screen made my stomach drop. Dad. Family dinner. 6 p.m. Important discussion. Another message followed immediately. Don't be late. No, how have you been? No, congratulations. Just a summons. I held the phone between my fingers, feeling the weight of 8 silent months pressing through the glass. This wasn't a reunion. This was a transaction dressed up as family. And I knew exactly what they wanted. See, real estate is a small world, especially in a city like Seattle. You hear things when you work quietly. When you don't brag. When you keep your head down and listen. For 4 months, I'd been hearing whispers about a commercial plaza. Prime location. The kind of property every major developer in the district wanted. The kind that could anchor an entire redevelopment project. I also heard that my father and his business partner Howard had been circling it. Hard. The property had been tied up in an estate sale. Complex ownership, lots of red tape. Most developers gave up. But I didn't give up easy anymore. I spent weeks tracking down heirs, sitting through meetings with lawyers, learning every detail of the property's history. I made an offer that was fair but firm. And when the paperwork finally cleared, I didn't tell a soul. So I bought it. The entire thing. Signed the papers that morning, actually. Hours before that article went live. I didn't rush home after getting my dad's text. Instead, I pulled into the lot behind my office building, a place no one from my family had ever bothered to visit. The sky was sinking into that bluish gray that always made Seattle feel quieter than it really was. Inside, I set my black portfolio on the desk. The same one I'd stitched by hand all those years ago. The seam was still there, crooked in one corner. A reminder of the night I spent alone, telling myself that one day I'd have something worth putting inside it. I opened it slowly. Papers brushed against papers. Contracts. Valuations. Spreadsheets. Progress reports. My entire life organized in signatures and dates. Not one sheet owed anything to my family. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant either. I felt precise. At 6:42 p.m., I stood at the window overlooking the city. My reflection hovered in the glass, blazer creased from work, hair tied back, exhaustion sharpening my jawline. It was a face that had earned every inch of that $5 million penthouse. My phone kept buzzing on the desk. Reporters. Colleagues. People who suddenly wanted quotes and interviews. I flipped it over and turned off the sound. This was what mattered. Not their noise. I pulled out the acquisition file I'd finalized that morning. The commercial plaza. 4 months of negotiations. Dozens of site visits. Too many late-night calls with inspectors. Without question, the most important purchase I'd ever made. I ran my fingers along the edge of the final sign page, tracing the ink I'd pressed into it just hours earlier. They wanted me at dinner. They wanted something from me. Something big. I didn't need a confrontation. I needed clarity. I reread every clause, every footnote, every closing condition one more time. Not because I needed to. I had the whole thing memorized. But because I wanted to feel the weight of what I'd done. What I was about to do. I slid the entire packet into my black portfolio and pressed it flat with my palm. The action felt like sealing a door. By 7:19 p.m., I grabbed my keys and walked out. I left my coat hanging. It felt unnecessary. Too soft. Too personal. Outside, my Honda waited, its faded paint catching what little streetlight it could. I placed the portfolio in the passenger seat and slid behind the wheel. For a moment, I just watched the city breathe. Traffic easing. Lights flickering. Wind riffling through the last leaves of early autumn. Everything I'd built came from this silence. As I drove, I passed all the landmarks of my childhood. The corner store where Aubrey once made me wait in the cold while she talked to friends. The park where Tyler used to brag about how Dad never let him fail. The bridge I'd walked across alone more times than I wanted to remember. Every place felt like a tally mark. Here's where they weren't. And here's where I learned to live without them. The portfolio lay still beside me. I brushed my fingers against the stitched seam. I didn't rehearse what I'd say at dinner. Words had never worked with them. They talked over apologies, talked past explanations, talked through every boundary I ever tried to draw. So I stopped trying. This time, I wouldn't bring anger. I wouldn't bring explanations. I would bring proof. I pulled into their driveway at 6:59 p.m. My father would appreciate the punctuality. The house glowed in that familiar heavy gold. Through the dining room window, I saw silhouettes moving. Aubrey leaning forward. Tyler gesturing. Dad pacing. None of them knew what was sitting in the passenger seat of my car. I opened the door, stepped out, and adjusted my blazer collar. One slow breath in. One steady breath out. They wanted an important discussion. Fine. I had something important too. The front door opened before I could knock. My father filled the frame, shoulders squared like he was greeting a client instead of a daughter he hadn't spoken to in 8 months. You're right on time, he said, stepping aside. No hug. No warmth. Just approval for punctuality. The dining room was already full. Aubrey sat straight-backed, swirling her wine. Tyler leaned back in his chair, fingers tapping the table. Howard adjusted his tie like he was preparing for a board meeting. My mother hovered behind her chair, smiling too hard. The smell of beef stew filled the room. My mom's specialty. The one she used to make for every family milestone. Except mine. I took the seat farthest from the head of the table. The empty space they decided was mine. Dad didn't waste time with small talk. He never did. Let's get straight to it. We have an opportunity on the table. Howard leaned forward, clasping his hands. A warehouse district redevelopment. Valuable land. Strong projections. We're ready to move, but we need capital to finish. They didn't even flinch at the bluntness. Dad nodded. Yes. We thought this could be a family partnership. You come in with funding, we guide the project. Everyone wins. Aubrey lifted her glass. It's generous, honestly. Considering how new you are to all this. Tyler snorted. Yeah, you get to learn from real experience. My mother placed a hand on my arm. Her touch felt foreign. Sweetheart, this is a chance to be part of something bigger than yourself. I let their words spill into the room. One over the other. Overlapping like static. Not a single, sorry. Not a single acknowledgement of the 8 months of silence. Not a word about missing my graduation. Just their plan, wafting through the air like the smell of the stew cooling on the table. How much are we talking? I asked quietly. Howard's eyes lit up. 2 million to start. More as the project develops. And what would I get in return? Dad smiled. The kind of smile that said he thought I was finally playing along. A stake in the project. 20%. An invaluable experience working alongside people who've been in this business for decades. 20% for $2 million on a project built around a property they didn't even own yet. The property I'd bought that morning. I reached for my black portfolio and set it down. The sound, soft, controlled, cut through the conversation like a dropped coin. The room stilled. I did come for an important discussion, I said quietly. Just not yours. Dad frowned. Maya, we don't have time for. I unfastened the portfolio and opened it. A stack of documents, clipped, ordered, slid into the candlelight. Howard leaned forward, his brow tightening. His hand froze halfway to his wine glass. Is that the commercial plaza? Yes, I said. The one every development firm has been circling for months. Dad inhaled sharply. You're exaggerating. That property isn't even available. I looked at him. Really looked at him. It was 4 months ago. I placed the signed acquisition documents on the table. Their names reflected faintly in the glossy pages. Aubrey stopped breathing. Tyler's chair creaked under him. My father's jaw clenched so tightly the muscle jumped. Howard reached for the pages with trembling fingers. You bought it, he whispered. The entire plaza, I nodded once. Which means your warehouse district project has no anchor property. And no anchor means no funding. No approval. No investors. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Dad finally found his voice. Why would you do this? You knew we were going after it. No, I corrected. I knew the city was going after it. And unlike you, I don't wait for opportunities to come to me. This is business, Maya. Howard's voice was sharp now. You don't sabotage family. Sabotage. I repeated the word slowly. I bought a property fair and square. The same way you taught me to, Dad. You said real estate is for people who understand numbers. Turns out, I understand them just fine. My mother's voice cracked. Maya, we're supposed to be a family. A family shows up, I replied. The words came out steady, but my chest felt tight. You skipped my graduation. You skipped my life. But you didn't skip the headlines. We're sorry about that, Mom started, but her voice was weak. Rehearsed. Are you? I asked. Or are you sorry I'm not giving you $2 million? Silence expanded across the table. Thick. Unmoving. Aubrey finally spoke, her voice small. We thought you understood. We thought you knew we were busy. I did understand, I said. That's the problem. I understood perfectly. I gathered the documents and slid them neatly back into the portfolio. The click of it closing echoed in the quiet. You wanted an important discussion, I said, standing and adjusting my blazer collar. This is it. I'm done being the one who figures things out. I'm done making myself smaller so you can feel bigger. And I'm definitely done funding your projects while you can't even show up for my life. Dad's shoulders sagged. Aubrey looked down at her plate. Tyler mouthed something like a curse, barely audible. Dinner's yours, I said. But the future? That's mine. No one followed me as I walked out. They just sat there, finally quiet. The night air felt colder than I expected when I stepped outside. sharp enough to cut through my blazer. The porch light hummed and flickered the way it always had when I was growing up. I stood there for a moment, letting the warmth from the house fade off my skin. Then I walked to my Honda, opened the door, and slipped inside. Through the windshield, I could see the front window of the dining room. Shadows moving. Someone gesturing. Someone else sinking into their chair. I couldn't hear a single word. That silence felt earned. My phone buzzed once on the passenger seat. A message from my mother. We didn't know how to make things right. Please don't give up on us. I stared at the message for a long moment. Part of me, the part that was still 10 years old, still offering up my science project, still trying to be enough, wanted to respond. Wanted to say it was okay. Wanted to fix it. But it wasn't my job to fix them anymore. I didn't open the thread. I didn't delete it either. I just turned the phone face down and started the engine. The drive home traced the same streets I'd taken 1,000 times. Each place looked smaller now. Like they belonged to someone else's memories. When I reached downtown, the city lights rose to meet me. White. Gold. Steady. My penthouse building stood at the end of the block, its glass facade catching the glow of the street lamps. I parked, rode the elevator up, and unlocked the door. The quiet inside was nothing like the quiet at my parents' house. No tension clinging to the walls. No unfinished sentences hovering in the air. Just space. Clean. Open. Mine. I set the portfolio on the kitchen island. The stitched seam caught the light, casting a thin shadow across the marble. I traced it with one finger, remembering that cold night in the studio apartment with no heating. Back then, silence felt like punishment. Tonight, it felt like clarity. I crossed to the floor-to-ceiling window and leaned my forehead against the cool glass. The city stretched out below me. Calm. Endless. Honest. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to explain myself to anyone. I finally understood, silence isn't what hurts. It's who breaks it. All my life, I kept saving seats for people who never showed up, leaving room for apologies that never came. Now I understood something simpler. Boundaries aren't cruelty. They're quiet doors we close so our lives can breathe again. I turned off the lights, letting the room fall into a calm, earned darkness. Tomorrow, I'd start planning the next project. The commercial plaza had potential I was just beginning to see. But tonight, I just stood there in my home, in my silence, in my life that I built with my own hands. And for the first time in 26 years, that was enough. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about finding your worth when the people who should have seen it never did. The strongest thing you'll ever build is the life you create after everyone stops watching.